Welcome back to the Six Pack Dad Tribe podcast. I'm Chris. I'm the GM at the tribe and also one of the tribe coaches. And today we're joined by one of my awesome clients, also named Chris. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, glad to be here, bud.
Well, Chris, a lot of people listening to the podcast probably don't know you, so would love for you to just introduce yourself as a person, and then we'll kind of dive into why you joined the tribe.
Yeah, uh, glad to. I would say father of four kids, married, pretty active, enjoy working out. Um, have done martial arts for most of my career, tennis. I would say I like hiking. I like outdoor activities. Um, Pretty committed professionally, committed spiritually. Just a busy, busy dad with lots of commitments. Keep stacking on there. Yeah.
That's right. And we're doing this at 9:30 my time, 8:30 your time. We just put the kids to bed in true dad fashion.
That's exactly right. We squeeze in when we can. Exactly.
That's right. Yeah, and you are in Arkansas, right? Yep.
Yep. Yep.
And so you joined, I was looking at it earlier today, April of 2025. Is that right?
April of 2025. Chris, now that I think about it, I thought it was November, but I could be wrong. Is it April?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. That's what I had down. So it's well, let me double check that actually. Now that we're now that we're on that subject, but that way we have the dates right. Let me see what I put here. No, you're right. November 17th. I don't know why I
Okay.
put it. You're right,
I was
because
like,
you're
oh
coming up
man.
on a year. It hasn't been a year. That's
That's
right.
right. That's right.
Good catch, good catch. So thinking back to November 17th is when I have you starting to log stuff. What was kind of the catalyst that had you reach out to us, or maybe you heard from us first? Like what kind of pushed you to pull the trigger here and join the tribe?
Yeah. I would say there was a couple big things. So, an uncle that I, loved, right, passed away. He was not much older, maybe like 7 or 8 years older than I was. And the way he passed away was super tragic. It was roughly around the age which my kids were growing up, right? And so his kids are about my kids' age, and it was just super shocking. He was pretty fit, right? Did lots of weightlifting, lots of outdoors activities. I mean, on the surface, looked pretty good. And he just died of some heart conditions. And I remember coming back from that funeral, thinking to myself, man, there's something to that. And so I asked my primary care to do some blood work, and when you get to our age, blood work is important, right? And so they're looking through all the different numbers and, found that like, cholesterol is not great, right? And I mean, I generally eat pretty healthy. I thought I did at least. Lots of rice, lots of vegetables, lots of meat. And, you know, just I wasn't making good progress on those figures. And I think I got really serious. It was for me a wake up call. His passing was a wake up call for me to kind of think about, like, I have to try something different. I clearly haven't figured it out, right? I mean, throughout high school and college, play different sports, worked out pretty darn frequently, and my weight kept climbing, my belt loops kept getting wider and wider, right? And just wasn't making good progress. And I think out of the blue, a mutual friend of Tyson's reached out. No, I'm sorry. Um, Tyson reached out a long time ago, just talking, networking, right? And so I had a conversation with him before, not about like his program by any means. I didn't realize he had this endeavor that he was pursuing, but he reached out, and said, "Hey, would you be interested in checking us out?" And so, granted, like I knew Tyson, knew some of his family, realized he was pretty stand up. I think he gave me a pretty sweet commitment, saying like, "Hey, like we'll bet on you to pull this off," and relatively low risk, I would say, right? And so I think the confluence of my uncle passing away, me knowing Tyson, me being frustrated. Oh, I forgot one more thing. Like I was doing jujitsu and I blew up my ACL right around that time. Yeah, I'm not sure if you remember that, Chris. And that was pretty heartbreaking because I was doing some jiu-jitsu, doing Ushimata, and the guy countered, I countered, I countered wrong clearly, right? And so I just ruptured that ACL, and I think when you get that much trauma to your knees, right, like just your morale kind of drops. And so, if you eat the same like you would when you were training, that doesn't help either, right? And so you got all these factors compounding. What made me realize I think I need some backup, right? And I noticed during physical training, as part of that recovery, in my mind, I had a good plan. I was pretty motivated. My PT said I was super motivated. I had a baby coming along the way, and so I wanted to make sure I was able to help my wife, hold the baby and take care of the kids. So I was highly motivated. But even then, being highly motivated, working, doing the extra credit outside of the PT sessions, I found myself still needing the physical therapist to work with me and push me harder, which is kind of interesting. I consider myself a pretty driven person. But I guess the frame at which I had of what the frame of which I was working towards, what was good enough wasn't good enough, right? And then there's obviously some, doing the exercise right, doing the movements correctly makes a difference too. So the combination of that kind of got me in this mindset of being coachable, I think, Chris. And what appealed me to the program, because I was talking to one of your uh, one of your colleagues. Effectively, it was just he wasn't promising like a get skinny within like X amount of time. He wasn't promising it at all, but he was very much. I think he himself was a participant at some point and made some great progress. And he was kind of explaining to me, hey, these are some of the lifestyle changes you're going to do. It's going to be a little slow, but it's going to ramp up. And there's some principles here, and then we're going to teach you some things that very likely, maybe you've heard about, but maybe haven't really committed to, and pull some things out, and maybe things you picked along the way of your, X amount of years life, or picking up some bad habits. And then the combination of that, you're going to see some good results, but it'll take some time, right? And so it was very a pragmatic way that explained to me. It wasn't really super sales gimmicky or like a lot of pressure, that kind of thing. And I think again, all those things coming together, I think made me coachable, Chris. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of some context there.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, having been your coach for this whole time, you've definitely been coachable, and you're one of the younger guys in the tribe, and it's just cool to see because oftentimes the tribe skews older because I think people hit that point where they're like, I need help when they're in their 50s or 60s. So it's cool to see like younger guys doing that. And I mean, you get faster results that way. And yeah, I mean, you've been awesome to work with. And so yeah, I mean, you've been in the tribe since November. Now we've clarified that one. And so it's been probably, I guess that would be coming up on 9 months. And would love to just hear from your perspective, like how have the results been? What have you felt? Not just, we'll go through like the numbers on the scale and stuff like that, but also non-scale victories. Like, what have you gotten out of this experience?
Yeah. From a jiu-jitsu performance perspective, I'm a lot lighter, a lot nimbler, more explosive, right? I'm carrying a lot less weight, right? That isn't helpful. Every other year, a buddy of mine, we take our kids and we go backpacking and canoeing up in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota. And like this year particularly, despite my ACL injury that I was recovering for a year ago, right? Um, Despite all of that, but we were training and focusing on it, right, Chris? We changed some of my regimen to focus on more of those functional exercises that relate, right? Felt great. Like I was able to enjoy the trip, not just be a suffering fest. And so it was really nice to experience nature in a different way rather than just being a struggle. It was more of a pleasure, right? Um, as much as like 44 miles could be, right? But
Right.
it was good. I would say more energy. I think one of the early wins I remember was, from time to time we would travel down to Kansas City um, you know, for grocery shopping or, some things to do in town, right? And, one of the areas we love is this amazing barbecue spot. And, every time we'd go home, roughly around 6 o'clock, I would, a rack of ribs, maybe some brisket, and, some fries. And on the way home, I would be exhausted. I'd be falling asleep as we were driving home. And my wife is there like, get up, Chris, we're having good conversations, right? But like, you know, just there's definitely a crash that happens when you consume that much, right? And I think after starting the program, with you guys and the training you guys gave, like planning the meals early, having enough protein, having the right type of like macros included in your diet, my energy level was more consistent. So it wasn't a spike. It was just more like a steady, right? And so like, and that's, throughout the entire day, like my entire life for the most part. That's kind of right, talking a little too much about how I've eaten, right? Like I've always had these spikes, right? And I think this program, this lifestyle that we've developed, allows for more consistency, and so you don't feel like you need to take a nap, every big meal, right? And it's probably because Southeast Asian diet usually has rice or noodles or things like that, so they're high carbs, right? Lots of energy, which are helpful at times, right? But when that's the bulk of it, like it makes sense why your energy, comes and it goes real quick. Your body's
Yeah.
digesting all that. I think I would say, and we'll talk about numbers later, you had mentioned, but I would say the, one of the wins that maybe weren't as physical, more mental was, as we were tweaking, the lifestyle that I've developed, accumulated over all those years, right? Those 30 something plus years. You get used to habits of what you eat, and patterns of when you eat, right? And I think Um, again, going back to that framing, I mean, I like fruits and vegetables, don't like sweets, don't drink that much pop. Like there were some good bedrocks there. But my problem was the amount, right? My problem was the amount and when, right? And um, I think one of some of the intangible wins I saw was, from a blood work perspective, right? After we've gone through this program for some significant time, like my cholesterol numbers were great, you know. Doctor said you have no risk of that now, right? And so, I mean, it was a combination of a couple different things, like medications, but my MD was super thrilled with the progress we'd made that couldn't just be done by medicine, right? And it became more sustainable rather than just a crash, right? And so that that blood work, the planning of the meals, like structured my life differently than where I had in the past. And so in order to get, our workouts in, to get, the right amount of protein or carbs in, like I had to pre-plan ahead of time, right? And I think initially, Chris, like I think I was talking to one of the other guys about this. Um, I like variety in my food, right? And I think over time that variety there comes at a cost because you can't really trace like how much of what is inside of there. It tastes so good, you just keep going, right? And so I think you know, planning for those nice meals takes a bit of effort, right? And I think we got really creative in terms of how we approached those. So maybe maybe pizza diet, or maybe it would be like some Chinese food or something like that. But we would get strategic about like how much you use. So maybe you can have some of that now and then have some of it the other day. You save it for the next day, so you don't actually throw away and waste that food, right? But you can save it for another day, and you can still hit your goals that still maintain all the needs you have for that day. Um, I think that cascaded into other parts of my life, right? More time with the kids, structuring when I do some scripture studies, when I work out, all those types of things. Like I think that behavior, as you start like, I guess, building that foundation of, okay, I'm going to watch what I consume. It cascades to other parts of your life, I think, and that's a huge one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that's so cool to hear because yeah, oftentimes like this journey's it's way more than just nutrition and dieting and losing weight. I mean, it can impact so many things. And yeah, I love hearing that and just the carryover. And it's taken time, right? It's been 9 months, and I think oftentimes people want it to go really quickly, or that's what they've been conditioned to expect just from seeing stuff online. We'll walk through the exact numbers and when you joined, where you were at, and then versus where you were at different points. I see where I got that April date from. That was the end of your fat loss phase.
Got it.
So you joined last year, November 17th, 2025. You were 207 pounds, 24% body fat, 8 inches on the waist. We did phase one until April. So just around 6 months. Yeah, just about 6 months of just dieting. and we weren't over indexing exercise. You were still doing exercise, so you were doing your jujitsu, you were doing some hit cardio. We introduced some structured strength training. I looked at it in about February. We added in two structured strength training workouts, and then you rode that out through the end of April here. And at the end, you were talk to me like what you were feeling. I kind of remember you were feeling like basically like this. I think I'm at a good point. What was your thoughts when you hit 175, 18% body fat, 33 inches on the waist? What were your thoughts, and what kind of led you to? I think we had a discussion basically like, are you ready to go into phase two, and why?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So when you start tracking um, your body weight at consistent times, right? And you start doing your measurements with the tape measure, right? I think you're hyper fixated on like progress, right? And the tangible like progress, right? And I think part of the things is these scales also measure, through a formulation, right? It's not as accurate as like an in-body or the gold standards that we talked about, Chris, but like it's enough to where you're like, okay, I'm making progress there. And I think I started seeing that like, okay, maybe my muscle mass was deteriorating. I was like, wait, hold on here. Like that's not a good thing. I lose muscle, right? And I think honestly, Chris, as I was going through this phase of, monitoring our calories and kind of resetting that baseline, I got a little worried. I was like, okay, so am I going to start withering away? As weird as that sounds, right? I remember you and I had a conversation around like, well, I always be at this level in terms of just this worry. He's like, no, 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 Chris, like, because as you build your muscles, um, the amount of calories your body's going to need is going to increase. He's like, what we could do, since you're worried about that, Chris, is if you hit I think you mentioned if you hit your protein goals, that's good fuel for your body. You're doing, jujitsu like you mentioned. If we add a little bit of strength training in there, it's going to make that curve less steep, right? Because you're engaging them, right? Um, and then I think we got to the point because I think we had a conversation like Chris, like what are your goals, right? Where do you want to be?
Because
And
your
again,
original goal weight was 185.
185. Yes, that's right,
Yeah, that's
185.
right. So we had exceeded that, and we
Yeah,
kept having conversations like, "All right, are you there? Like, are you there?" Because almost
yeah.
everyone comes in with like this a weight, and they think that's where I need to be. When I get there, I'll look how I want to look, and then they get there and they're like, I actually want more. I think that was you, but
That's right.
there
That's right.
we stayed in touch on like you tell me when you've had enough weight loss, and then we're gonna shift gears and start building muscle.
That's totally fair. Yeah. Now that you refresh my memory there, Chris, I think it was a combination of a couple things. I think it was 185, and then we kept making progress to where, as we were tracking, as I was dialing in my diet, like we were almost like plateauing almost. We were like, okay, we need to do something different in order to, um, you know, you could stay here and maintain it pretty easily. I think is what you said, Chris. You've proven you can maintain that weight. We're not worried about you fluctuating a ton. Like, what do you want to do? Right. And it became a tipping point of, I guess I could stay this way where I'm at right now. And keep in mind, I wasn't planning to compete in bodybuilding or anything like that. Right. I wasn't planning for, to get to like an X% body, but I was just more interested, like, can I get enough to where I can have a healthy lifestyle and enjoy, the foods I like and spend the time but not work out like 6 hours, a day kind of situation, right? And um, I think the tipping point, Chris, if I can point to it, was, you know, I think inside you feel ready. I think if I had stopped and said, okay, 185, if I stopped at like 186 and said, like, let's switch to phase two, I kind of would feel like I was cheating myself a little bit. Like I didn't hit that goal, right? I was trying to hold myself to a standard. And I think once we like reset that goal and we blast past that goal, Chris, we were thinking, like, is that what you were wanting? And I think it dawned on me that the numbers sure are important. Like that wasn't what I should be fixated on. It's like, how do you feel? Like, where are your goals that are not metrics? Does that make sense, Chris? Like that felt more that I think it shifted from tape measures and scales and percentages to like what do you want to get out of it? I think we were talking like, oh, I want to have a little bit of armor so when I do some jiu-jitsu, like I don't think I'm not prone to injury, right? I want to have a little bit of extra speed for the young whippersnappers, right? And so that's I think that's at that point, Chris, we were talking about like, hey, we maybe it's time to give you some more energy. So let's switch this up a little bit. So as you train harder now, let's give you some carbs so your the fuel that your body needs, you can see some of that progress in other ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, I keep it pretty open-ended for most people. It's not like, hey, you have to hit this weight in order to go to phase two. And for people who don't know what we're talking about, phase two is our muscle growth program. Phase one is our fat loss program. So again, it's open-ended. It comes down to the client. And, again, it's just I want to make sure people are pretty lean because if you're not lean going into phase two, you're not gonna be able to see your muscles. So I think that, part of going from 185 to 175 was like, let's get a little bit leaner, right? You got it down to 18%. And
Yep.
that was with your at-home scale. And then you got an in body, and then we shifted gears and went into phase two. So we gave you a little bit more structure on the strength training, raised your calories up pretty substantially, kept protein the same, increased carbs, increased fat, just to give you more fuel. And what happened was really, really cool. Weight hasn't changed. It's been 3 months since we switched gears fully, and it's actually gone up. 177 was your most recent in-body weight, and you've dropped 5% body fat from 18 to 13% to an inch and a half further off the waist, all while eating more, which has been pretty cool. So it shows that you've been striking a balance where you're eating enough to feel your efforts, but you're still in that slight deficit. So you're still losing a little bit of body fat, but you're also gaining a little bit muscle, and we've seen that happen on the shown on the in body. So talk to me like about how phase two has been for you, like going from phase one dieting. You had that mindset like, do I have to eat this low of calories forever? Now you're fueling, you're growing muscle, you're focusing more on strength training. We've worked a lot on technique and working around different injuries and stuff like that. Kind of talk to me about your phase two experience because not a lot of people get there and have success in that phase.
Yeah, that's it's a good question. Off the cuff, Chris, I was thinking for phase one particularly, I think you can rely on a lot of um, you could cheat is probably the wrong word, but you can rely on supplements because they're super easy to track, right? Because they're processed, they're made. You scan it with your MyFitnessPal and you're good to go, right? Like you can hit your numbers pretty easily. But then like it becomes pretty expensive, cost prohibitive to keep doing it that way, right? And I think you and I had a conversation around like let's see if we can do this more naturally, right? So maybe with the chicken breasts or different types of proteins, right? That different sources that don't cost as much, don't break the, and then they also taste better, right? Your body you craves that natural food, right? And um, I think for me, it's been a journey to kind of pull back from that, we'll call it structured supplements, um, to, instead of maybe before it was like maybe 60% natural, 40% supplements in the calories, right? And now it's swung the other way. It's like 80% natural and 20% supplements. Does that make sense, Chris? And so like it's been nice to kind of relax the gas pedal in terms of the precision around like how much um you need of certain macros. Because I know like out of habit, um like I guess like when you leave the fat loss phase, you almost get a baseline. Like this is what you're comfortable with. Your body starts getting used to it, right? I think you and I talked about this before. Like I was actually having a hard time hitting hitting the new calorie goals that we had, just because my body was used to this routine, right? And so I had to purposely like find things to put in there. I remember like one late night, I was like, oh man, I gotta get some salmon here because like a canned salmon because I didn't have enough protein and I'm so used to hitting that like that lower calorie range. Um, I think that journey moving from cutting to building is night and day. I would say cutting was rough, but building is also rough in a different way because now what you're trying to do is use that fuel because you just can't eat those calories and not do anything.
Right, right.
Right. And so like now I'm planning, okay, I have, we have a workout training regimen that we have designed, right? And so we're trying to figure out with my particular body, the quirks I have in terms of biomechanical movements, all that kind of stuff, like what works for me and won't injure me, right? Because I've been through like, weight room in high school, right? And where the coach was like, hey, just put a couple more plates in there, and like you get injured real quick. And so I was as an old man trying to make sure I don't re-injure myself, but with my high school injuries, um, we took it slow. I think we took it slow. Like we weren't trying to add like 3 plates, on each side for my deadlift. Like I think we were okay starting real light and then adding over time, right? Like once you got comfortable with the form. And I noticed that as I started having more carbs, my energy levels increased. Like you could tell because we were training a little bit before I started phase two. You could tell that the amount of weight and the amount of reps would jump. You could feel it in the workout too. Like I think some days you'd wake up, you'd be like, okay, I got this, but you're just doing it off sheer willpower, right? Like it felt a little easier to get up and do it now, interestingly enough. And that's something I probably took for granted before how I ate. Um, yeah, I would say energy level has been great. I think it's been nice to see because we cut a little deeper than my original goal. As we're making progress building that muscle, you can see that definition, which is nice, right? It's a little bit of motivation. You kind of see that real time feedback because right now, instead of just relying on the scale and tape measures, you can look at other ways to kind of track your progress. Does that make sense, Chris? So now it can be the amount of reps you do. Now it could be that in-body scan. Um, does that answer your question? And feel free to dive deeper, but hopefully I crossed a couple of those bridges you were looking for.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was great. And it's a fully different approach when it comes to progress. And I know we've had a few discussions where you're like, is this supposed to be going this slow? Like
Oh yeah,
half pound of muscle gain per month, maybe a pound of muscle. And I was like, yep, that's how it goes. It's real
that's
different.
a great point. That's a great point.
Um,
Like I remember consistently, Chris, during the cutting phase, we were like 2 pounds, a pound and a half, like pretty like clockwork. We were watching
per
this
week.
thing. I was like, per
Right.
week. Thank you, per week. And I was like, wow, this is easy. It's starting to get easy. After month like 5 or 6, I was like, this is getting easy here, right? And that's what I was telling you in the beginning. Like, I was like, man, I'm just gonna keep withering away. Like, what's happening here, right? You're like, no, 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 no. Your body will adjust to it. Yeah, when we started the building phase, the progress is much slower. I think to your point, and that's why your goal has to be other things other than just the scale or the tape measure. That's like I was telling you. And for me, I start tracking my metrics. I still track my food, but like the body weight metrics, the body fat, all kinds of. I'm doing those every 2 weeks or every month, right? To do the in-body scan, which is a little more comprehensive, obviously, right? And it's because I think we realized, Chris, that like if it's going to take within a month to gain a pound, right? Or a pound and a half. Like, does it really make sense for you to like be maniacally studying that progress at an eighth of an inch and all that kind of stuff? Like, because there's days that you, depending on what you eat, you're bloated or, the water or like, there's a bunch of different factors, like flexing that day, all that kind of stuff. And so I think it becomes more realistic to track it that way rather than with a scale. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's much more about the work that you put in and trusting in the process that it's going to pay off. But what's been cool is like, yeah, in phase two, you definitely can't look at the scale because it's not going to be going up. Again, most people are capped at like, 2 pounds of muscle growth per month. That'd be if
Yep.
you're doing everything right. So you're not going to see the scale going up drastically, especially if you're trying to strike that balance where you're still losing a little bit of body fat, gain a little bit of muscle like we are right now. So, the scale hasn't moved for 3 months, but in terms of body fat percentage and body composition change, it's almost more drastic than the first 6 months. First 6 months you lost 6% body fat, and now we're down 5 in 3 months, just focusing on building muscle. So that's what's been really cool. But yeah, it is a slow grind. At sometimes like I remember you were thinking like, is this working? Like it's going slow. I showed you some of my progress, and
Yes.
just it's slow. But again, most people have a twofold problem where they have too much body fat and too little muscle. And so when you lose the body fat first and then start gaining that muscle back, that's how you continue losing body fat percentage without just having to keep tanking your weight. Because I think that's what some people think is that they just have to literally wither away and just keep losing weight forever. But most people don't know about this phase two, this muscle building phase, and how much progress you can make in that.
Let me add one more thing to that because I remember a conversation we had, Chris, that was super valuable for me. Back to like when I was thinking I was withering away. I think I was in my mind just studying, the scale and looking at like what is my muscle mass and what's happening to that, right? And I was asking you, Chris, I was like, hey, like we'll be relatively quick to rebuild that because I've heard somewhere, some old wives' tale that like, the muscle that you already gain, if it atrophies, it's easier to gain it back, right? Rather than building it from scratch. And I think you said something interesting. I think you said effectively, Well, Chris, like your body, sure, your muscle mass may drop a little bit, right? But we can gain that easily. But what you're going to see is the quality of that muscle, the effectiveness of that muscle is going to change as you train it. And so you may, I'm throwing numbers out. If you may be 145, muscle mass, whatever it may be, right? Um, and then when you start after you cut from time, maybe you're like 120, but you'll be able to lift more than you ever lifted before because your muscles are now engaged and working, all that kind of stuff. And so again, just looking at the numbers from the scales perspective is just not good enough in phase two. You have to look at the amount of weight you're lifting, the reps you're doing, how you feel. It's a lot more comprehensive than before. And I think I like what you said there. It's trust in the process. And so I think I guess how I put this. Before every week I'd be looking at the scale at a certain time. Okay, this is where I'm ending up. Am I on track? Yes or no? What do we need to dial down? I think now it's I'm writing that lifestyle, being thoughtful about it, expecting the results to come, but I have no expectation of time, right? Because like I think we've realized that my body, particularly Chris, like it'll ebb and flow depending on what you eat. My mother comes into town, cooks some amazing, amazing meals, has a little more salt, so the water retention will increase, and so like you just can't like glue your self-esteem to the progress like that, right? Like it's more of this is very cliche, but the journey is probably what more matters here. And then having a diversity of ways to track it is probably more important at this point.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great takeaway because yeah, it is such a journey for most people, and and yeah, to make real lasting progress, I think it just takes time and having that long-term mindset and ultimately trusting the process. And I think of all the things that have stuck out to me that you've done well is trusting in the process. I don't feel like at any point have you really like been like, oh, I don't want to do this, or you've just been like, all right, if that's what you say I'm going to do, I'm going to do it, and you do it, and yeah, you've put a lot of trust in us, so we appreciate that, and yeah, I appreciate your time today. Any last parting words for us?
Yeah, I would say if you're on the fence about it, I think, as Chris said earlier, the process works. I'd tried many different things, magazines, YouTube videos. I'd hired personal trainers to do it, and I think the combination, Chris, of um, a nutrition coach and a trainer is a great combination. Um, I think you can't outwork a bad diet. And I think that's of all the things that you learn, like, maybe the Rocky movies, maybe all these like martial arts movies, maybe all these like, these rags to riches type of stories. They have these guys going through this journey arc where like, they get their butt into shape and they go, right? And it just happens, right? And but usually that montage is is them working out,
Yeah.
which I mean, it's inspiring, it's cool, it amps you up. They like never show you like they're eating. I'm pretty darn sure like that's where the majority of the gains come and the losses come. Um, and so I would say, if you dial down your eating, and if you, well, I guess one more piece of this, like if you're stubborn about trying to stick and build that habit, like you'll do just fine. All right. It may be a year, maybe 9 months, maybe 4 months, but if you're stubborn about that habit, because I remember I got sick a couple times, Chris, and you know, I'm not saying work yourself to the point where you're completely exhausted and falling apart, but I would go for a walk. You know what I mean? Just to keep that habit of like getting myself moving. I bought a cheap, stationary bike. I go for 5 minutes. There was days where I was like I had a early morning appointment and I could only get like 10 minutes in before, I had to go to work. So I'll jump on the treadmill for 10 minutes just to build that muscle memory of like, hey, this is what you do now, Chris. You just get in the bike and go even if you're not feeling fantastic, just take a couple pedals, right? And I think your mind will thank you for that as that habit hardens, and then over time, um, you're eating, you're working out, like you'll get re-baseline to it's like to where it becomes like a natural expectation, almost like when you wake up, our bodies have like an internal clock where we wake up for many of us, right? Like your body just gets used to waking at a certain time, right? as you build that habit. And for me, it's kind of become more like clockwork, um, because I think we put that time rather than going for, like the lightning fast or like the super hard cutting in the beginning. Does that make sense, Chris? Like it's sustainable because it's become a habit rather than um, a sprint, right?
Yep, yep, exactly. And that's something we preach to everybody is just taking it slow and steady. And I like what you said there at the end. Be stubborn about your habits. I love that. That's good. We'll end
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that. All right.
Awesome.
Well, Chris,
Awesome.
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, bud.